Hello and welcome back to RichInsider. It is so good to have you with us. Today we are exploring an interesting yet less spoken topic. Have you ever wondered why some nations seem trapped in a cycle of poverty while others flourish in abundance? In this video, we'll unravel that mystery. There are many developed countries in the world who were once suffering from poverty, but why do some countries remain poor? How did the rich countries become so rich? Interestingly, in recent years, many Asian countries like South Korea, China, Vietnam, India and Bangladesh have experienced remarkable economic growth, lifting millions out of poverty and enhancing living standards. However, the situation is different in the African continent. Despite gaining independence with optimism in the late 1950s, African countries have faced challenges in achieving similar levels of economic success. But why is it so? Let's find out in this video. Throughout history, some countries with the most impressive economic success stories have had little to no natural resources. For example, Switzerland has no significant natural resources, nor does it have ports to trade globally. Yet, today, Switzerland's GDP is much greater than many of the developing nations combined. On the contrary, countries blessed with natural resources have often fared worse than those without. It might seem counterintuitive, but according to a report from the IMF, countries abundant in resources like Nigeria, Bolivia, Congo and Venezuela have actually performed worse economically compared to resource-poor nations like the Asian tigers. According to the US Energy Information Administration report in 2023, Venezuela had the world's largest proven crude oil reserves, with approximately 303 billion barrels, accounting for 17% of global reserves. Clearly, natural resources alone don't determine a country's development. Research suggests that in recent years, when developing nations have discovered natural resources, it hasn't always led to the anticipated economic boom. So what else could it be? But first, let's discuss what we mean by the cycle of poverty. It's a complex process where one generation passes on its poverty to the next, creating a vicious cycle that's hard to break. One of the main culprits is structural barriers and systemic inequalities. These can limit access to quality education, healthcare, and basic infrastructure. For example, children born into poor families often don't have the same educational opportunities as those from wealthier backgrounds. This lack of education then limits their job prospects, trapping them in low-paying jobs and perpetuating the cycle of poverty. Political instability, corruption, and economic mismanagement can also play a significant role in keeping countries poor. Political instability can deter foreign investment and disrupt economic growth. Corruption can divert resources away from critical services like education and healthcare. And economic mismanagement can lead to inflation, unemployment, and debt, all of which can exacerbate poverty. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about resource-dependent economies. These are countries that rely heavily on exports of raw materials like oil, minerals and timber. While these resources can bring in significant revenue, they can also make these economies vulnerable. That's because commodity prices can fluctuate wildly. And if a country is too reliant on a single resource, these fluctuations can cause economic instability. This phenomenon is often referred to as the resource curse. So, as we can see, the cycle of poverty is a complex web of interconnected factors, each exacerbating the other and making escape a daunting task. So, how do we determine the poorest countries in the world? GDP per capita is often the standard metric used. However, adjusting for differences in living costs and inflation rates through purchasing power parity, PPP, can provide a more accurate assessment of an individual's buying power in each country. When adjusted to the purchase power parity, Luxembourg had the highest GDP per capita at $117,747 US, while Burundi had the lowest at $708 US. But even in the face of such overwhelming odds, some countries have managed to break free from harsh poverty levels and soar towards incredible prosperity. A key strategy that stood out in these countries was that their governments invested in the most valuable asset a nation has: its people. By focusing on human capital, countries can equip their citizens with the skills and knowledge needed to drive the economy forward. This means prioritizing access to quality education and healthcare, which are the building blocks of a productive and innovative workforce. In addition to investing in human capital, fostering a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship is crucial. By encouraging citizens to think creatively and take calculated risks, countries can stimulate economic growth from within. This requires a supportive environment where new ideas are celebrated and failure is seen as an opportunity for learning rather than a dead end. Moreover, it's essential to promote inclusive institutions that support economic development. These are institutions that provide a level playing field, allowing everyone, regardless of their social or economic background, to participate in the economy and reap its benefits. They include fair legal systems, accountable governments, and accessible financial services, to name just a few. Now, let's look at some success stories. Countries like Singapore, South Korea, and Taiwan have managed to transition from poverty to prosperity in a relatively short span of time. They've done this by implementing strategic government policies that prioritize education and technology, creating a highly skilled workforce that can compete in the global economy. They've also embraced openness to trade and foreign investment, which has allowed them to leverage global markets and attract the capital needed to fuel their economic growth. In the case of Singapore, for instance, the government has played a pivotal role in steering the economy towards high-value industries like finance and technology. By doing so, they've managed to transform a small island with limited natural resources into a global economic powerhouse. In fact, we have made a deep dive about Singapore in one of our previous videos. Kindly check it out if you're interested in learning more about Singapore's riches. Indeed, the success stories of these nations can serve as a roadmap for other nations striving to achieve economic prosperity. In the 21st century, new trends are emerging that challenge the traditional notion of persistent poverty. As we move further into the digital age, technology is playing an increasingly crucial role in driving economic growth. Countries are leveraging digital technology to enhance productivity, foster innovation, and create job opportunities. Take a look at Africa, for example. Despite being one of the world's poorest continents, it is home to some of the fastest growing economies. Countries like Rwanda and Kenya are harnessing the power of digital technology to leapfrog traditional stages of development. Moreover, a new wave of sustainable development initiatives is sweeping across the globe. These initiatives, ranging from renewable energy projects to sustainable agriculture, are creating jobs and fostering economic growth while protecting the environment. Regional cooperation, too, is playing a pivotal role. By pooling resources and sharing knowledge, countries are able to overcome common challenges and accelerate development. The BRICS group is a fairly good example of such an economic alliance among many of the emerging market countries. These innovative strategies act as strong and exciting opportunities to break free from poverty and become developed nations. In conclusion, long-term poverty often stems from a combination of factors rather than a single cause. Poor government policies can undermine the prosperity of even the wealthiest nations, just as political instability and social unrest can perpetuate economic challenges. Breaking this cycle requires comprehensive and sustained efforts, including investment in human capital, infrastructure development, good governance, and equitable economic policies. By addressing these root causes, we can empower individuals and communities to break free from poverty and create a more inclusive and prosperous future for all. What are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care.